With all my talk about the NFL and concussion and the incidents in concussion and Maurice Norris's injury and protective gear and things like that, I have had a follower who has mentioned rugby a couple times and saying that helmets are enabling and that rugby players actually don't sustain head injuries because they know how to tackle and they know how to tackle properly, and so they're less likely to sustain a concussion and they don't feel like they're basically superhuman and can just make any hit that they want to. And I found that interesting. I don't follow rugby, so I figured, let me look into that. Let's see if there's any kind of merit to this. My name is Hillary. I am a licensed and certified speech language pathologist who specializes in concussion and cognitive rehabilitation. Unfortunately, I can tell you right off the bat, that's incorrect. There is research that shows what they measure it by is like athlete exposure. So they say basically for every 1,000 hours of player time, they're not looking at it by the number of players because that's just a really hard stat to compare anything to. So what they found for American football players, it is approximately 4 to 6 out of every 1,000 player hours. And rugby is going to be 6 to 8 out of every 1,000 player hours. So the incidence looks like it is higher for rugby players than it is for football players. The thing with that though, it is slightly, it doesn't necessarily show the whole picture because especially if we're talking about CTE, we're not necessarily talking about diagnosed concussions. We're talking about even subconcussive blows that wouldn't count as a concussion. You wouldn't necessarily notice symptoms. It's just the amount of force that is a subconcussive blow. There's also potential for both sports who have unreported concussions and things like that. So it's a hard statistic to kind of think about, but I would say generally the idea that rugby is going to be safer because they don't have helmets and other protective gear. They should know better about how to tackle, and there are different rules and you can't tackle at a certain height and things like that. I don't think that is actually supported by the research. Also, you might think that there would be a higher incidence of other type of injuries in rugby, things like orthopedic injuries like ACL, broken legs, stuff like that. Concussion actually still ranks as the highest injury incidence in rugby across the board. So it was an interesting thought. I went, let's look into that. I don't follow rugby. Unfortunately, it just can't really hold water. Rugby has a higher incidence of concussion without helmets and padding.